All right, guys, so welcome to my 4th edition of the In Conversation series with. As you know, I've been welcoming speakers from all over the industry to come and speak to you guys and give you a sense of what it's going to be like when you leave. I am so excited about also next week. Our final installment will be with John Bartlett from Megaphono and Kelp Records, Kelp Management. And he's doing some really great things in our city and for the Canadian music industry, and I think it would be great to have him and talk about just what it's like to turn on a dime in the industry. You don't want to be the Titanic. You want to be able to change as the industry changes with you. So, but honestly, I'm super excited about who I'm getting to welcome today. I don't even think he would take my calls. If I called him, just admit it, right?
I wouldn't.
See? See what I'm saying? So the fact that he's here today is really amazing. Let's just tell you who he is. He's the president and CEO of the United Talent Agency, one of the largest talent agencies in the world, with offices in Miami, London, Nashville, Toronto, Malmo, Sweden. Yes, because Sweden, and LA as well. And he previously, I think you co-founded the agency group with Ralph James.
Yeah, in Canada.
In Canada.
I'm the president and CEO of Canada.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not all of UTA.
Don't worry, we know.
It's a big company, and I play a small part here in Canada.
Yeah, it's still a pretty big deal. Yeah. What year did you start the agency group in Canada?
1996.
1996. So when you were working at the agency group, you helped with the careers of Sam Roberts, Metric, Bedouin Sound Clash, Alexis on Fire, Mariana's Trench, Hoxley Worksman, Stereos, and the Art Kelsey we were just talking about. And right now he also serves on the board of CARAS, which is the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, and of Music Count, which is the Academy's charitable arm that helps to raise money for music education in schools. I got that right?
That's right.
Is there anything I'm missing? Jack Ross. Please join me welcoming Jack Ross. Was there anything I'm missing besides Dad?
I'm sure there's lots you're missing, but nothing that jumps out at me.
No? Okay. I mean, that's a pretty...
Yeah, I've worked in the music, in the entertainment business for 30 plus years. I started while I was professionally while I was in university, and I've been fortunate enough to make a living at something I'm really passionate about and really love to do.
But I think, one of the things that we wonder as musicians and as people as well, going to talent agents like you, are you also a musician? How did you start off? Did you grow up in a musical house?
I grew up in I wouldn't call it a musical house. I'm not a musician. There's an awful lot of people that do what I do, and people that work with me that are ex-musicians, or they're musicians and business people. I shouldn't say ex-musicians, but maybe ex-professional musicians. I grew up really loving music and loving pop culture, and I've always been an entrepreneur. My first paper route when I was 8 years old. You'll find that many agents had paper routes when they were kids. It's a very sort of entrepreneurial thing that we do. I was a social director at my high school. I called up agents and I booked bands to come and play at my high school.
In your high school?
And realized that somebody did this for a living, and that there was a business behind the music. A lot of my friends were musicians and played in bands. I remember very succinctly being 15 and with some pals in a rehearsal space, probably somebody's basement really, and they were rehearsing and I was hanging out, and they were like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could play some gigs? And I was like, well, why don't you then? Oh, we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to get a gig. It's like, well, I can do that for you. I can get you a gig. And they said, how do you know how to get a gig? And I was like, I don't know. How do you know how to play guitar? It's natural to me. I've I've just been doing business all my life, and I recognize that I have a passion and a love for music and performance, and that for that to happen and for the artists to be looked after properly, they need people like me to help them out.
So what would you say is your philosophy for business and for looking after an artist? I mean, are you the good cop, bad cop?
Depends who's on the other end of the phone. An agent is, it's a really interesting position, because you have to have a serious ego to put yourself out there and get on the phone, and maybe you're cold calling people or just jumping into a situation. You have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's part of negotiation. You have to take that ego and stuff it down. Sometimes you have to be, agents are pragmatic people. We try to bring a buyer and a seller together. The seller would be the artist, and the buyer a promoter or a presenter or a club manager or something, and help everybody get on the same page and make a deal that will work for everybody. I don't know if I'd say I have a philosophy. Perhaps I'm not that deep, or I haven't thought about it that much in that context. But I work for artists. They're the ones that pay me. It's a very simple and transparent relationship. Even with the biggest artists in the world and their agents, it's a very simple, easy, transactional relationship, and it's very transparent. Generally, we take 10% of whatever the artist is being paid. It's very simple transaction. We, in our company, in our office, we strive to be the most professional, together part of an artist's business team. We work very hard. We take a lot of pride in the work that we do. As true talent agents, we represent talent. And I've made my career in music, but it's not all I've done either. I have represented actors and comedians and broadcasters and writers. All talent you will find professionally working is represented by agents. UTA is a big Hollywood talent agency. There is a handful of them in Hollywood. They're all global companies. It's very big business. There's 14 departments at UTA. We represent some of the biggest movie stars in the world. We represent some of the biggest directors in the world. We represent some of the biggest screenwriters and writers in the world. It's a global business, and it's been eye-opening. I started with this company 17 months ago. They acquired a company that I was a partner in called the Agency Group. We were the world's largest independent music agency. And there's a big Hollywood agency called United Talent Agency that didn't have much of a music department. And they had been trying to build one for years without a lot of luck. So they opened their checkbook and they bought the Agency Group. So that was, I owned a small part of the Agency Group as a partner in the Canadian operation. So we sold our company to Hollywood and went to work for them. It's been really exciting and really different in my career these last 16 months. I always wanted to get a chance to work at one of the big Hollywood agencies, sort of like a mechanic who's got, who's been working on Chevys and Fords, and all of a sudden there's a BMW or a Porsche in front of him, and he gets to lift the hood and look under that and see what's going on. It hasn't changed what I do a lot on a day-to-day basis, but there's certainly a lot more information that I have access to, and a lot more knowledge, and a lot of different platforms that I can help bring my clients to. And that's been really exciting. But it has been a very big change.
Well, I was reading that you changed from representing artists to looking more at a territory, like I think UTA books, or is that, am I saying it right? It's more of a territorial
Sure, but
approach?
it's very nuanced in terms of how we put together tours for our clients.
So how does it work?
It used to work where I would sign a client, the Arkells, a random band that happens to be multi-Juno winners and have performing on the big broadcast on Sunday night, and I would look after all of their business, all of their shows, all over North America, all over the world. And when we came into UTA, they asked us to work differently, and so we've divided up the world, and all the agents work on the entire roster.
So like you also have Kanye, right?
Not
UTA?
anymore.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And so what I'm in charge of territorially, as well as my day-to-day duties as a responsible agent to a number of artists, I look after large theaters and arena tours that go across Canada for our company. So it could be Guns N' Roses as a client of ours. And 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been involved in a Guns N' Roses tour. One of my colleagues who signed them and represents them would have set up all their dates. Now I'm pulled in and involved and working on the negotiation of their dates and their tour. Honestly, it's not something that's really important to the day-to-day of what I do, or to what you would all want to know or understand.
But it's what happens, I guess, for the smaller groups that you were building up and developing. Do you still feel like you have a hand in their development now that you have this new system, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We just have more people involved in their careers.
And can you give us some examples of people that you've worked with from the ground up that we might know?
Well, you listed off a whole bunch of those clients. I've been fortunate enough to a lot of the clients that I personally have signed and represented have really long relationships with them. I met the Sam Roberts band 15 years ago, and kind of signed them on the spot, thought they were very special, and I've worked with them throughout their career, and that's a decade and a half at this point. Really starting from making sort of $100 a night trying to get on a stage and get exposure, and to now they regularly earn $100,000 a night.
What does that development path even look like? Do you feel like
it's different for everybody?
Yeah.
If anybody ever tells you that there's a set of rules in the music business or entertainment business, they're bullshitting. There's no right and wrong. It's rock and roll. It's different for everybody. We're supposed to. Our clients are a lot of them are, they're breaking the rules and setting trends, not following them. They're opening up new paths. So there's, you know, it's really all based, it's all based on talent. You know, I can't think of a recording artist or an entertainer who's had any kind of sustained career that isn't incredibly talented, that isn't gifted, and that doesn't have a real work ethic. It's, you know, sometimes that could be hard for struggling musicians or people that really want to be professionals or they want to be a star, to look up and, like, you know, why are they making it and I'm not? You know, but I really can't think of anybody who isn't incredibly talented. It all starts with that talent. You know, what I'm looking for when I'm scouting talent and looking for artists to represent, I'm looking for artists I think that have potential to be great. There's so much good around. There's so many good guitar players and good singers and good songwriters. We're looking for talent that's better than good, that can be great. They might not be great when we first start working with them, but we think they have the potential for greatness. You know, it's a dream business. It's heartbreaking. It's also incredibly exhilarating. You probably experienced some of that.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's my favorite job. My favorite thing I've ever done. Yeah. You know, so a lot of us maybe are here and not planning for a pop career or, you know, the huge career. But I think what's so interesting about you is that you started from the ground up booking, well, bands in high school. So you also understand what it is like to be like scratching and trying to figure out how to just get a toehold. So do you have any advice for budding musicians who are going to have to start booking themselves, like who may be in what one would call the craft category, like jazz or folk or country, or pop or rock? What can they do before an agency like you would be interested? Like, what can they do for themselves?
You know, I think it's pretty obviously what I'm going to say, but you know, most importantly, to work really hard at your craft. You know, if you're a guitar player, you know, practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall. If you're a singer, practice. Try to be great. You have to go out and you have to. There's a very fortunate few that make a living as professional musicians. I don't think every musician is an artist either, by the way. I think an artist is someone who's creating, and not every musician is going to be creating per se, writing, and that's okay. Not everybody should. It should come from, you know, there's maybe a gift or a gene for those that are creating. You know, every great piano player is not going to, you know, write symphonies like Mozart. You know, every great guitar player is not going to, you know, write rock songs like Duane Allman and Eric Clapton. It's I don't think you should really really expect to have a big career or become a star. The chances of that happening, it's like buying a lottery ticket. It's really hard. So I guess to try to answer your question succinctly, you have to, I believe in anything in life, you have to work really hard at it. There's no insta keys to success. I guess treat the environment that you're in with respect and expect to be treated the same way. But
I think those are some good tips. I was always I just always found it interesting. Like you could find, and you were saying that not all musicians are artists. I think for a large part of the time, a lot of musicians or artists need to also be entrepreneurs, and there's that. I'm trying to find that balance between the work and the creativity. Do you find that a lot of the more successful artists that you've worked with are also good business people, good entrepreneurs?
No.
No. Not at all, eh?
There's some.
Yeah.
There's some that are, but not all of them are. If you're really good, business people will swarm all over you. We will find you. We turn over every rock. There isn't anybody out there that is undiscovered. It's everyone's been looked at. There's it's a big business between the record companies and the publishers and the managers and the agents and the promoters. We're not missing anybody. So, if you expect to be a professional musician, a jobbing musician, a symphony musician, you'll need to have some business acumen to look after yourself. But if you see yourself as a recording artist and a star that's going to happen, I wouldn't worry about business. I would worry about learning how to write great songs, learning how to express yourself in a way that the thousands of people are going to want to hear it and be communicated to. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. John and Paul, George, and they actually didn't have Ringo then. They played 5 sets a night for 5 years in clubs in
Germany.
In Hamburg, yeah. And became a great band by learning their craft, by studying Buddy Holly and Elvis and Little Richard, and really understanding the essence of rock and roll. And then they started their career and wrote some great music, and then they studied with George Martin, who taught them so much about kind of next level musicianship and different arrangements and instruments and ideas of how you could put music together. But they never stopped. If you look at the output of the music that they made in their career, it was huge. They weren't waiting for inspiration. They were in a studio or on a stage making it happen. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, definitely. And the people that you're working with, you find have a very similar work ethic, where they're constantly creating or constantly constantly improving.
Again, not all of them. Everybody's different. Everybody's path is different. Some of them, and maybe some of the ones you expect. Nickelback is a client of ours, and a band that we've worked with their entire career and met them when they were a struggling, unsigned band that had a shitty manager and no record deal or anything. And they were working really hard, and yeah, they were good at business. They continued to be really good at business. They had that sense of what it was going to take to become a really big band and a huge recording act, and they've sold like over 50 million records around the world, and have become superstars. They're also the most hated band in the world and the most successful band in the world at the same time.
Probably for the same
reason. It's a crazy contradiction. It is for the same reason, really.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of other people that we work with that don't have that same drive to be a star, and their drive is more pointed at creating great art. It takes all kinds. As agents, we're sort of apolitical. We really believe that anybody who has an audience deserves representation. So we represent recording artists that make all kinds of different music. And we would never limit ourselves to, can't ever represent a polka band. No, if there's a polka band that is great and are in demand and people want to hear them and see them, we'll help them do that. We all have, as humans, we all have a subjective likes or dislikes or a taste. And, most of the people I personally sign and represent are rock and roll songwriters, is probably the easiest way to put it. That's what I get off on. That's what I personally enjoy the most. So I'm always led in that direction. I'm looking for, the next Tom Petty band or the next Bruce Springsteen.
Well, speaking of that, how do you find your music? Are you still out there going to live shows? Are you listening to the CDs? Are they coming in digitally? Like, how are you finding new music?
Well, certainly not listening to CDs much. I still do at home. My kids think it's hilarious. My wife's disgusted that I have all these CDs all over the place, but I still like holding on to music. I like reading the credits and what studio was it recorded in and who produced and who engineered and that sort of thing. But we find music a lot of different ways. Really, I have a network. It's not an official network. It's an unofficial network of friends and colleagues in the music business all over the world who send me stuff, tell me about artists. They might be lawyers, they might be promoters, they might be, people that work for Music Manitoba as a provincial organization. It's a really strong organization that's really dug in deep with the recording artist community in Manitoba. They'll call me, send me stuff. A neighbor dropped off a kid's CD the other day. You're never sure where it's going to come from. I don't listen to absolutely everything that comes across my desk, or I wouldn't really have time to do a whole lot else. But I try to check out most of it. To a degree, it's really simple, easy, you know. Someone sends you a link to their SoundCloud or sends you a link to something they've done on YouTube. You know, when you're really good at this, it doesn't take me long to have an opinion or know what I like or what I think is great. And that's a lot of years of doing this and judging talent and being successful at it. I can tell pretty quickly whether I think something I'm listening to, somebody I'm seeing, has potential to speak to a large audience. That's probably the best way of putting it. Like remarkably fast. Like sometimes it disturbs me how fast I formed an opinion, and it's just, you know, I try to stop myself. No, you need to listen longer, or check out the next song. Like push myself through it. But you know, I've really come to understand and trust my instincts and my gut, as it were. You know what I do as an agent, I'm not really judging the music. I'm not a musician or a songwriter or a producer, but I know what people like, and I've got an excellent track record and experience in understanding what is going to speak to a lot of people, and that's what I'm looking for. Is artists that I think have that potential to be great and speak to a big crowd. And it can, you know, there's an artist I work with, he hasn't really broken big, but he's so talented. His name's Justin Nozuka.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw Justin play when he was 17 in a coffee house. It was another artist that told me about him. A singer-songwriter named Davnit Doyle, who I know, who called me and said, Jack, you need to come see this kid. He's amazing. She was teaching a songwriting class, and he was in her class, and he wasn't a great musician. His songs weren't complex, but he is a really inspiring person who immediately had success and immediately started getting a lot of opportunities, a lot of doors open for him. And it was, I can't exactly explain it. He was just a really compelling person. And his songs were compelling, and I knew that people were, if they heard them, were going to love this guy. He had a great natural voice. You know, a lot of times I think music that's written and created sort of like naively can be the greatest. You know, someone who's not that experienced, a musician, you know, can write a song with 3 chords and doesn't feel compelled to, you know, to put in a tricky 4th chord or a key change or something. They just kept it really simple. That's what Buddy Holly did. You know, that's what a lot of the great music that makes up the rock and roll, the popular music of the last 50 years, and a lot of it's really simple. A lot of it's almost naive. Being able to be comfortable performing and saying those sort of naive things, you're not jaded, you're not too clever, that, you know, you had to make it better or smarter. It's really about how the music, what it makes people feel. You know, so we find and discover talent comes from all kinds of places. And again, artists are discovered from all kinds of places. You know, the most famous story of the last decade is a kid from Stratford, Ontario, who got discovered on YouTube and became the biggest star in the world.
Some guy named Justin Bieber.
It's a really simple, amazing story. You know, I don't think that a lot of the business affectations, the people think they need to have like a great press kit or an amazing, you know, 5-camera, $50,000 video shoot. I don't believe that. I think you need to be really great and have potential for greatness. And I really do believe that we'll find you. That there isn't, like I said earlier, I don't think there's anybody that's been overlooked that's undiscovered. I really don't believe that. There's anybody who wanted to be seen. It's not hard. You will get seen. The business isn't always right, but there won't only be one opportunity or one knock on the door either.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, I don't generally talk about my own story in these interviews, but I definitely feel like that was my story too, you know, just going to, like I had my build here in Canada, where like the jazz festivals and things they were really helping out. But when I needed to take the next step, you know, that was when the interest came from France, and that was when, you know, I got a chance to so like say like if I couldn't get the Ears of Universal here, I could get the Ears of Universal in France. And so I think that's another thing too. It might be that you might not, I mean, maybe that means I'm never going to be a big star worldwide, but I think for me, I didn't find what I needed here, but I did find some attention somewhere, you know, and maybe that's like, so have you found, well, you know what I want to know, because like so many people said no to J.K. Rowling. I think it was like 50 no's. So many people said no to the Beatles. Did you say no to somebody that you?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that you now look and go, whoa, I missed that.
Absolutely.
Do you want to tell us?
Absolutely.
Who did you miss? And what was it that you didn't see at the time but you see now? Like what did they do to get farther? Or do you feel like it's just kind of a situation where not here, so you're great, but just not, we can't help you?
I'm trying to think of a story I'm comfortable telling. Nothing's coming to mind. In terms of who was missed. You know, when Drake was on, what's the name of that TV show? He played Jimmy the kid.
Degrassi.
When he was on Degrassi, he was making his own like mixtapes at home and stuff like that, and they got shopped around the Canadian music business for sure. And I don't think it wasn't great, but we collectively didn't really stop to hear or see the potential and greatness in this young man, who is now, you know, one of the biggest stars in the world. He's incredibly talented. And I look back and I think, and I remember like this geeky teenager who was on this TV show, like pressing literally like homemade CDs into people's hands. And it's like, I look back and go, well, how did we miss this? And I think it just wasn't ready yet. And as he, you know, just to back up my theory, just when he was ready, he was discovered and put out there in a big way. And like I said, now he's one of the, he's incredibly talented and one of the biggest stars in the world. But we collectively missed him. Like, and I say me because I'm, I feel very much a part of the Canadian entertainment music business community. I'm here this weekend for lots of reasons, and partially because I'm on the board of director of Caris. That's how I ended up here today, is Caris asked me to come and speak to y'all. It's a volunteer board. It's made up of senior executives across the music business, and we run Caris, which is a not-for-profit organization, and we have a big multi-million-dollar charitable endeavor that we run called Music Counts. So we collectively, everybody missed it on Drake. And, but like I said, because he is great and so special, he was discovered and went on, to really become someone who's changing the way the business works.
So yeah, I think that's so interesting. I feel like there's a lot of hope in what you're sharing with all of us, because yeah, we do need to get great. And I think, yeah, it can be missed, and you might be part of a community or a sound that's not really resonating yet within our country, and
hey, I'm not here to make this sound hopeful.
Well, it does
either.
sound hopeful. I'm sorry, I feel hopeful.
Good, but that's because, I'm the digital revolution really changed everything, and it changed the way music is created, and the way it's marketed, and the way it's bought and sold and presented. And because of that, it opened all kinds of doors and all kinds of opportunities, and made the business really accessible to people. And it did change the nature of the recorded music business dramatically. It changed the nature of the live performance business too, but there's a lot more professional artists and musicians than there's ever been before. There's a lot more opportunity than there's ever been before. So I can be hopeful. That's my hopeful speech.
That sounds great. I love that. Should we cut him there? No.
There's a bigger middle class. There's more artists touring and making a living on the road than ever before. There's more people making music and making money from their music. There's also it's also created a bit of a false hope and false sense too, because it's so easy to record on your computer at home with an amazing program that costs next to nothing on your Mac, and you borrowed a good microphone from a friend, and you can make a good recording. But it doesn't mean that the business is going to open up to you. But it is a bigger business than it's ever been before. There's less at the top end. There's less superstars flying around in private jets than maybe there was in the 90s. But I don't think that's a bad thing, personally. For my business, and I think for the overall health of the business, I'd rather have a bigger middle class, which has happened. The world is globally accessible, but there's more regional success stories than there's ever been before. There's a recorded music business in New Zealand that was never there before. There's, I read this morning that, the city of Ottawa's, with the mayor's help and stuff, is creating a focus to help the music community here in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So that stuff's all hopeful, but I never want to speak, and I never want to be that guy that's up on a panel saying you can all do it. It's not true. It's like I say, it's like buying a lottery ticket to be a really successful recording artist. There's a little bit of luck involved, and you have to. There's some gifts that the universe is gonna present to you, and then you have to go take advantage of that. But I really do believe that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And like I said, I don't want people to get the idea that this is that everyone who wants to be or follows a set of rules is going to become a successful recording artist.
And so, okay, I think, you were mentioning that a few of the people that at the agency were musicians before.
Sure.
There's a percentage of us in this room that are going to move from music to admin to the business side. Do you have any advice for them?
My business partner that I started the agency group Canada with, his name's Ralph James. He was a bass player in a rock band in the 70s and 80s called Harlequin.
Does that start at Carleton or something? Like I was reading.
No, they played Carleton a lot.
Yeah.
Though. Universities used to have bands play on campus all the time. Doesn't happen much anymore, but
Not in Canada. I don't think a little bit more in the States, but
not much. Back in the 90s, when I really was starting as an agent, or the late 80s, Carleton would have had a couple shows a week.
yeah, I saw
on
De La
campus.
Soul here. De La Soul. Yeah, I remember them coming in.
There would have been a couple shows a week on campus. I feel bad for that. Anyways, Ralph is he's a bass player in Harlequin. He was the band business leader, and they were a successful touring act, playing clubs to arenas all across Canada, touring through the States. They did some work in South America and the Caribbean, and he had a great career and got tired of being on the road. Thought the band had really gone as far as they were going to go, and he always thought that he was a better business person than the managers or agents they had working for them. So he hung up his bass and picked up the telephone. There's a lot of stories like that throughout the music business, of people who were musicians. They might have been good enough musicians to be in a university music program, who segued into a business job.
Do you know that sounds hopeful?
Yeah.
Yes.
That wasn't my path, like I said. I grew up watching variety shows on TV in the 1970s and was in love with show business. And I'm still in love with show business. That's how I got here. But I think there's probably more work and more opportunity in the arts than there's ever been before. I also believe that getting an education and getting a higher education in the case of a lot of you will help you in life and in business, in whatever you want to do. Learning how to express yourself, learning how to communicate, learning how to work with others, learning how to write. I process like about 300 emails a day. I write 100 emails a day, probably. I'm a, when I was in university, I didn't finish, but I was doing a degree at Queen's University in political science and history, a double major. And I'm still interested in politics and history. But I learned how to effectively communicate and work in groups and express myself. And they've been really valuable tools to me. So any kind of education where you're learning those things is going to be helpful in life. I'm sure of it, without question. I have a lot of people that work for me. I have about 25 staff in our office in Toronto, and probably 2/3 of them have some kind of musical background. They played in a band in high school and realized that, there was 20 guys around them that were better guitar players, but they really loved it and they loved being around it and they wanted to be in the business. Yes, there's a lot of that happens. And so the education that you're receiving here, I think is really valuable. I have teenage kids like we were discussing earlier, and I'd like them to go to university at a high school, and I want them to do that because I think that continuing to educate themselves will be really valuable. I don't want them to go to university because it's going to lead them to a certain kind of career. I don't think you should look at it that way, at least undergraduate. I think it should be about being educated, about learning how to write, learning how to effectively read and process information, learning how to communicate, learning how to make an argument.
Learning how to think.
Yeah.
Be a proper citizen.
Yeah. I really believe in education. I think it's incredibly important, but I don't think it's supposed to necessarily lead you to a profession or a certain kind of career. And I don't know, most of you are a little older. I don't see any total freshies here, but it's a myth that you go and you study this and then you do this, and life doesn't work that way. It's neither black nor white. It's shades of gray in between, and nobody's on a straight road. Everybody's road, it's part of the human condition, will be full of twists and turns. We talked a little bit, and you're back here at Carleton as an artist in residence, right? Your life took a twist and a turn. But we all are.
Yeah.
We really all are. It might look from the outside like someone's got it all figured out, but I promise you they don't. Nobody does.
Yeah, I totally believe that. You know what I want to ask you as we're wrapping up? I want to know if you've experienced any pitfalls that you feel comfortable to share with us on this journey in the Canadian music industry, or in the music industry on a whole. Because are you only working here in Canada, or do you feel like you basically? No,
I work globally all over the world.
Right.
I made a very, very concerted effort to do that. I had a lot of success early on in my career working in Canada, and I was literally developing artists and passing them off to people in America to take over, and not sharing in a much, much bigger part of their career. And when I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to figure out a way to stay involved. And most of the clients we represent them globally, and certainly what our mission statement is to find and develop Canadian talent that we can take to the rest of the world and represent them. I've seen a lot of pitfalls. I've been close to the edge a few times. There's no question for me, part of the excitement of getting into the music business and doing what I do is like classic rock and roll. I was absolutely attracted by the sex and drugs and rock and roll part of it and the lifestyle, and enjoyed it, and been out really close to the edge. And I've known people who've died who got too close to the flame. There's as a talent agent, it surprises people sometimes when I say this, but we're making ethical calls on a daily basis. Because we could do sleazy shit like all the time. Like the opportunity's there. And it's, I really believe that I figured out as a young man to get up on the high road, metaphorically, if you understand what I mean by that, is to never go low. Don't be disrespectful. Don't say things about people. Don't conduct yourself in a way that is really respectful of the situation. And it might sound simple and obvious, but trust me, doing this job, there's a lot of opportunity. We really are making ethical calls all the time. And I could tell somebody this and they'd never find out, and just don't let yourself get drawn to the dark side. So, I'm still fighting all the time not to fall into the pitfalls. And it's something I teach, because I teach a lot. I have a lot of young people that work with me. I train and mentor people for a living. And it's something I talk about and we talk about a lot, and inherent within the music business, and it's not just in popular music. Certainly a long history in jazz and even classical music, where there's a dark side just over there, and it's really exciting looking.
It's calling you.
Yeah, so I gave you two answers there.
They were awesome answers. And you also answered one of my first questions, which was, what's your philosophy? And I think,
to stay on the high road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly, when I got into, I was working in live music venues and clubs, and I was managing clubs. I was 22. I was managing a big nightclub in Toronto. I had 100 staff working for me. 95% of them were older than me. I was just the most ambitious and hardest working, which is why I was the boss. And hard work is definitely a big part of that philosophy. I work 6 days a week. I go into the office every Saturday. There's a bunch of people who work professionally in the music business who do that. We talk to each other on Saturdays. I feel, like I said, really fortunate to be successful and make a good living doing what I do. And I know that a lot of my success is based on working harder than my competition. So that work ethic is a very big part of my philosophy.
But it sounds like you also have in your philosophy a sense of self-care. So I know that, going the high road is, but do you have, what do you do to keep yourself, on that high road from a self-care perspective? I see you're not working 7 days, so you're giving yourself a day of rest. Do you have
Yeah,
some
I should
rules.
probably rest some more. No, I think I'm a lot better at looking after other people than looking after myself. It's a calling, you know. Yeah, and self-care is something I need to spend more time on.
And I mean, this job is like your booking, but I know with my booking agents, they've also had a managerial aspect to them as well. So that's that taking care of the artist. And I mean, like when the booking agent is...
Very much. I've been around the business for a long time. I've been a promoter and a manager and an agent, and I've worked on all aspects of the music business. And when I commit to a client to work with them and represent them, I'm there to be a resource for them, whatever they need in their business. And you know, I'm working on a big deal right now for a client that involves sync rights for a song they've written in a big commercial, and then there's a sponsorship deal that's part of it, and I'm touching on a lot of areas that aren't just booking their live show. So, and I manage an office and a staff of people. Like I said, I've always been entrepreneurial, and I've always been managing. When I was 14, I had a snow shoveling business with 4 guys that were 16 working for me. You know, we're older than you. How come you're the boss? Because I'm the one that got the job. Okay, you want to get paid, get shoveling. That's there's definitely a big managerial aspect to it. It's a lot more than working at the level with the artists that we work at. It's a sophisticated business. It's very nuanced, and there's an awful lot to it. It's a lot more than just booking shows.
I think we're getting a good sense of that.
You know, in its truest form, I don't want any of you to leave here not understanding what talent agents do. We find jobs for our clients. That's our function. We find jobs. We get them paid. There's laws in the state of California where an artist manager can't actually book a job for talent. It has to go through an agent. It's partially conflict of interest. It's partly because it was agents that had a lot of influence in the state government in the 1940s and got that law passed. That's the truth of it. That law doesn't exist outside California, but really there's lots of different people in the music business. Any successful recording artist has a lot of people on their team, and almost all of them will work with an agent who helps set up their tours and live appearances. The live appearances where they're getting paid.
Yep.
I get a call from somebody and, oh, we want the artist to do this for promo. It's like, here's the manager's phone number. I don't do that.
Because promo's free.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm going to work on the appearances where you're getting paid.
Yeah.
Then most successful recording artists will have a really good relationship with their agent because we give them money all the time.
That's how we eat, honestly. Like, you can't eat without a booking agent.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are going to wrap up this session with one of the reasons why I started doing this was I used to love to watch the Actors Studio. But, as a performer, I mean, I love show business as well, but I love that scene in the Wizard of Oz where the curtain comes up and you see all the people working. And every time I was doing my shows, I would always acknowledge all the people behind the scenes. And I was that person in the movie theater that would stay and watch the credits at the end, because I think the people behind the scenes matter. And, I looked online, I couldn't find one article where you'd been interviewed. I saw one by Ralph James where he referenced you. But I mean, I know you're sitting on a lot of panels for like CMW and things like that. But I don't know why people aren't asking you questions. So I want to ask you questions, the same kind of questions that we would have asked you would be asked on the Actors Studio, because I love that show. And we developed this last 10 questions, if you can answer very quick answers.
Part of the reason there's not a lot of that out there, because philosophically, as agents, we're behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, if we're doing our job right, nobody notices us.
But I
and
wanna
we
know
don't
you.
want to be noticed by anybody except the artist.
Mm-hmm.
We put them out in front. That's our job. Is is to represent them in a way that helps put them in a position to be successful and makes them proud of the people that are doing business on their behalf, and make it all about them. We're behind the scenes, and it's just a bit of a touchy subject for me, not necessarily in a bad way, but there's an awful lot of ego and hubris in the popular and contemporary music business from the business people. And there shouldn't be. When the record companies, in the post-Napster world, and the record companies got into so much trouble, it wasn't because Napster was, made the music free. It was because that there was a bunch of business people that thought they were big stars, that thought that they could, pluck people out of obscurity and put them spend enough money on them, put them with the right producer, and that this was all, it was about product. Mm-hmm. And it's not.
It's about people.
And it's not about the business people. Mm-hmm. We're not that interesting. We have clients that are very interesting, that are very compelling people. I'm happy to tell you about insides of the music business and how people make a living and how it works. But I don't think I'm special. I think I work really hard, and I've been really fortunate.
But I think if you look at our audience, these are all people who would never get the chance.
Well, I don't have any idea about your audience here.
Well, these are music students. They're hardworking music students that are dreaming of being in all aspects of the music business.
Are y'all music students?
All aspects of the music business. Some of them are going to be big. Some of them could get close to being big. Some of them will never be big. We don't know who those people are. Some of them might start and stop. And I think one of the things that, for me, it's not so much that I want you to be a big ego on stage, but I want to humanize the music industry.
Sure.
And I want them to know that we all are just humans, and we're all people that are as you spoke about, following this path, and to see what the path looks like. And one day, one of these people could be you. And that's the other thing. It's I don't think we're all here just trying to be stars, but we're all looking at aspects of the music business and seeing where do we fit. And I want to show them what other jobs are out there as well. And honestly, your story has been awesome to listen to. For me, I'm not. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Look, they're all nodding, and I didn't pay them. So I just look at you as a human that's working through an industry that I know and love, and I want to share your story with them.
I'm glad you say you love it, because you've done it for a long time. And had a bunch of experiences. There's lots of people that worked in the business, especially on the artist side, who get really embittered by the business. I certainly see that a lot. It's kind of heartbreaking sometimes. It's really hard. The business doesn't owe you anything. Like I said, it's a dream sort of business, so it can be really, really heartbreaking. It's, it needs to be treated that way. you can have careers as musicians and careers in the music business, but in terms of being a recording artist and somebody who's touring really successfully, there's it's not really a profession. It's something else different apart from that. Just saying.
It's almost like a miracle. Yeah. Well, I want to ask you then some specifics. Okay, we'll do them quick. Let's see how we're doing for time. Okay, yeah, we're tight. What's your biggest fault?
I have so many faults.
Just pick a good one.
I don't know where to start.
What pops to mind?
Impatience.
Yeah? Okay. All right. What do you love most about yourself?
Being in my mid-50s and having a full head of hair, I guess.
That's pretty rockin'. Yeah. What's your definition of success?
Feeling really rewarded by my work, and not in a material sense. Yeah.
What do you envy?
I envy great singers.
What do you regret? Oh, so because you don't sing?
I
have to follow up.
I just don't sing publicly because I'm a horrible singer.
I had to follow up with that. I was like, I can't let that slip.
I'd love to. I'd love to be a singer.
So, what do you regret?
I'm not really a big believer in regrets. I think it's a pretty wasted sort of a emotion. There's things I'm ashamed of. There's things I've done that I'm not proud of. But I'm not a big believer in regrets. I'm a big believer in taking responsibility for my decisions and living with them.
Okay, what decision did you make that you really celebrate?
Believing in myself and starting my own businesses. I've never been very good at working for other people. I always think that I can be the boss. I can do a better job being the boss.
Okay, well, what did you believe about yourself or in the music industry when you started that you no longer believe now?
I guess I believe that it was that the business people in the business had more power than they do. You know, the head of a big record company, there's such a big shot and they're so powerful, but those people come and go and those jobs don't last forever. And I believe in being a humble person, and I don't want to. I used to think that the business people had a lot more to do with the success, and it's not true. It's always about the artist and their talent.
Love that answer. Was there anything that looked like failure at the time that now you see was the right decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Too many to cite. Life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I certainly look at my career that way. I am absolutely the tortoise. I have been really fortunate. I've been able to have a successful career doing something I'm passionate about for a really long time. And so, yeah, there's daily bumps in the road, and there's lots of stuff that looks like failure, that doesn't, the next day or a year or 10 years later. It's really important to keep moving forward, and you don't have to move forward at a really fast pace. Therefore, the tortoise and the hare metaphor here, or analogy. It is important to keep moving forward. It's really important to pick yourself up and keep going. When we started the agency group in Canada in 1996, there was really a monopoly in the talent business in Canada. There was one company, a company that both my partner Ralph and I used to work for. And they tried every day to put us out of business. This was really, really tough. This was like full of dirty tricks. This was lying, and there was all kinds of stuff that went down. And it was really hard, but we never even considered stopping or giving up or, selling out. We're very determined people, and I love sports metaphors. When you're up at bat, you might get hit by a pitch, the ball, you might get knocked down, but you have to get up again. And if you go up to bat, you might get a hit. If you don't go up to bat, you'll never get a hit. So that's a big part of my philosophy too.
That was awesome. I was going to ask you if you had any final words of advice, but would that be it? Because that was pretty awesome.
No, I don't have any final words of advice. Well, maybe I do. Enjoy what you do. Follow, live a passionate life. It'll be a happy life.
Thank you. Well, we have 3 minutes. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask before we close the camera off? Dude, you answered oh, wait. Go ahead.
Does, in terms of what you look for in a great artist, does their current social media following, I guess, who they have already attracted the eyes of matter to you? Or would that be something that you could see potential in growing going forward?
Yeah, it can matter. It cannot matter, too. It's kind of like it's like a bonus. What I said about we're looking for artists that we think have the potential to be great, I sort of don't care. Like, if they have a record deal or a manager, or they have, 500,000 likes on Facebook, or in its essence, I think that we can shape all of that. We can make all of that happen if they have the potential to be great and they have a lot of talent. If we find somebody that we think can be great and they've got a great social media presence, that's a bonus. It does tell us something. It would probably be a factor in how we found them or discovered them. Do you know what I mean? It's something we talk about in our business all the time. I've probably gotten 50 emails since I'm sitting here, and some of them are from agents in our offices around the world going, hey, I just found this. Everybody have a look and listen. And they'll list a bunch of stats. 200,000 followers on Instagram. They've got a SoundCloud page that's going crazy. There's 1 million listens on Spotify. Those are all factors that tell us something. but they're not defining factors. And like I said, we're, as agents, and not for everybody in the music business, but as agents, we would have less sort of, I don't know the way to say this to make it sound good, but sort of less standards than everybody. And what I mean by that is that if you have a big following and there's a demand for your services, you deserve to be represented. So, you know, everybody might think you're crappy, or that's not everybody, but that's the word on the street. But, you know, there's 100 fans or 1,000 fans over here that think you're great. So you deserve to be represented. Complicated answer, I know, but so yes, it matters, but it's only, you know, we look at everything.
May I ask a supplementary question?
Sure.
I know we focus more on the pop in terms of rock and roll, but what's your stance on, I guess, rap, hip hop, and now trap?
You know, I think it's the same thing. It's pop music, popular, and like I personally, I can trace a straight line from, you know, the newest hip hop back to Muddy Waters and what was going on in Chicago in the 50s, and you know, down to the Delta, where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil to be great. I really believe that hip hop is an extension of jazz and blues, and I think it's the same thing. So our company, we have we represent a lot of hip hop artists because it's really popular form of music right now. It's tough to work in hip hop as an agent. You know, there's this pervasive. It's actually part of hip hop to sort of be. It's almost part of the culture not to respect the business around the music, and that's real. And there's a lot of hip hop artists out there that don't pay their bills. You know, you asked if we represented Kanye. Nope, we don't. Kanye doesn't like paying agent commissions, so we don't represent him anymore. It's an interesting part of the hip hop culture that's sort of creating a lot of new roads and new paths. But you know, it's sort of it's interesting, and it's be interesting to see where it goes. Most exciting thing in hip hop by far is Chance the Rapper, what he's doing in all facets of his career, and the music he's making is so exciting because he's mixing all these different elements. He's also representing himself differently. You know, his music isn't about, there's a lot of me in hip hop. There's look at me, I'm so great, you know. Look at me, I'm a stud. Ladies, you want to come over here because I'm the man, you know. There's a lot of me. And I find it kind of shallow and gets tiring really quickly for me personally. But when I'm Chance the Rapper, what he's doing and saying, I think is really exciting. I'm hoping that he's going to be at the forefront of next wave of really socially conscious hip hop. I'm hoping that the really messed up political environment in America is going to be seeds for music and artists to step out and really be representative of what people need and of a broader truth to what's going on in America and in the communities where hip hop music is being made. So you can tell, just listening to me ramble on here, that I spend a lot of time thinking about hip hop. We are deeply involved in the hip hop music business, and it's really hard. It's really hard. Fun though. Nothing good comes easy.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
You've been talking a lot about what you look for in artists, but what do you look for people working for you and within your circle in the industry, say someone entering it?
You don't get paid a lot starting out in the music business anywhere, as a musician, as an artist, or as an intern or assistant at an agency. And I'm really, we have a really dynamic group of people working in our office, and I don't really believe that people who are going to be successful agents are, we give them a lot of training, but I also think they're sort of born to it a little bit. I joked earlier about having a paper route, but almost every successful agent I know had a paper route. And it's a metaphor for being like a serial entrepreneur. You were a kid when your friends were out playing, you were working. It was just what came natural to you. And
How many paper routes in there? Yeah.
So to be an agent, I'm looking for people that are passionate about working hard and creating something for themselves, seeing an opportunity to develop a career for themselves. There's a lot of really the most successful people in the entertainment business started as agents. It isn't, I've been doing this a long time. I've done other things, but it burns people out after a while. Not everyone stays at it, but David Geffen, who's one of the most successful executives ever in the entertainment business, he started in the mailroom at the William Morris Agency, and so did Barry Diller, who's a billionaire who owns TV networks and stuff like that. They started as agents. I'm really proud of being an agent and the legacy of agents in the business world. I tried to say this earlier and it didn't come out right. I actively worked and continue to of trying to bring a level of professionalism to the agency business. When I started out, it was really natural to me, but agents were definitely at the bottom of the barrel in terms of their reputations and how they were seen And it certainly wasn't considered a profession or something that professionals did, especially in the music business. It's a really sleazy business. And we've worked, myself and people who work with me, we've worked really hard to sort of elevate that. You have to have, be a successful music agent, you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit. Then you have to have a real grounded, or maybe not grounded, but a real a wide palette of music that you like and enjoy and that you're passionate about. And almost all the successful music agents I work with are real passionate music fans. And, you know, that passion is part of their core and right at the surface for them. So when I'm interviewing people, you know, we talk about music in interviews in my office, you know. Seen any shows lately? What'd you like? What didn't you like? You know, what are you listening to? You know, what'd you grow up listening to? Did your parents teach you that the greatest rock and roll band of all time is 4/5 Canadian? They're called The Band. If you don't believe me, ask Bob Dylan or Eric Clapton or Van Morrison, Neil Young, they'll all tell you. That is the greatest rock and roll band of all time. You know, it's fun. We get to talk passionately about music all the time. Looking for people that have had experience, even at the most basic level. Were they the social director in their high school? Did they put on shows? Did they work in, you know, at their university or college putting on shows? Did they play in a band and book their own shows? You know, were they a busboy in a nightclub so that they could hear bands play? All those things. And then sometimes I'm just looking for people that will show up and be consistent and work really hard, because there's a lot of boring paperwork that happens in a talent agency. A lot of boring paperwork. And thank God I have people around me who are really good at doing that stuff.
Good. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming. Let's give a round of applause for Jack Ross.